Hey everyone, it's Chat back in another video, and today we're going to be going over all the epics that either need or don't need a 6-star. So let's jump into it. So I'm going to be going ahead and going through every single faction here and just briefly giving a description. Now, I do want to mention that some of these characters have different ways you can use them as either a debuffer or more of a supporty type character over a damage dealing character. And if that's the case, I'll let you know whether or not you need to 6-star them based on what you're using them for. So we're going to start off with the Holy Light Empire here, and we have William as our first one. This one's a really easy one. Absolutely not. There are people still who I know are using William in their Ash 14 comps, in their Void Tower, all that good stuff at a 5-star. He's very tanky already. All you're getting is extra tanky stats, and he always survives, usually as the last one. So definitely don't need a 6-star on him. Thomas, if you're using him as a debuffer and not necessarily for the damage, specifically for the defense down and perhaps the stun and the positive effect removal, you don't need a 6-star. But if you are using him for that damage, then I would definitely recommend to use him as a 6-star, especially if you're using him in Tulpa. Next up is Edicris, and same thing for Edicris. If you're using him as a purely dispel bot, meaning you're just using him and trying to get all the positive effects removed, you don't need him as a 6-star. He's not super tanky though, so he can die very often. So I would recommend him taking to a 6-star though, because I oftentimes like to see a little bit of damage built on him, and it will help out both of those things. So I would say recommended 6-star for Edicris. Then we have Jacob, and I would not use Jacob at all if he's at a 5-star, pretty much. I think there are a lot better options in general, as he does not use in many game modes already. If you're using him in Guild Boss, I definitely would recommend 6-starring him because he will benefit from a 6-star a lot. Definitely wanting to 6-star that guy. Next up is going to be Mognar. Now, Mognar I would not recommend as a 6-star. I don't think he does enough damage to warrant being a 6-star, and I would rather just use him as the stun and for the defense down on the basic, which I have used before, but definitely not a good character overall. Then we have Bruzak, and another one who doesn't need to be 6-star. You're using him for the defense up 2, or the AoE taunt here, or just the passive, and so you don't need him as a 6-star. He's plenty tanky enough as a 5-star. Next up is Urzak, and Urzak 100% needs a 6-star. This guy, he's unusable without the 6-star because he needs to reach a certain level of attack to where he's actually more than the enemy to really get use out of his passive. And you're not going to get that as a 5-star. So if you want to use Urzak, you're going to 100% need to 6-star him for Arena, for Guild Boss, and things like that. Next up is Aurak, and actually Aurak is a little interesting because you should 6-star him if you're using him in Tulpa or trying to burst someone because he does do a decent amount of damage. But you actually don't need a 6-star to get big damage out of the ultimate because it scales with enemy max HP. So you actually can get away with him being at a 5-star if you're using him in Tulpa or things like that. But still worth taking to 6-stars if you're using him in those game modes. Next up is Okubi, and this guy absolutely doesn't need a 6-star. All you're using him is for the debuffs and for his passive here. So you don't really need a 6-star on him. He's just going to land those debuffs anyways. Next up is Sylvan, and Sylvan also doesn't need a 6-star. You're getting her in the comp for the defense up and the stuns and the passive. Don't need a 6-star for all that to happen. And she's decently tanky without a 6-star already. And mind you, any of these characters that I'm mentioning don't need a 6-star. If you want to 6-star them, you'll get extra tank stats, and that does help out in some areas of the game. Next up is Hugh, and Hugh has kind of two areas where you can use him, although he's not very useful in general. If you're using him for the speed down on the second skill here, and sort of like a reverse Windstrex, don't need a 6-star, just stack a bunch of focus on him. But if you are using him for the damage and the counterattacks on his trait here, definitely want to 6-star him for that extra damage. Vance, don't want to use this guy without a 6-star, in my opinion. You can use him for the duplication of positive effects, but it's not going to do much. And you can also use him for the attack down on the basic, but again, not really going to do much here unless you really get some good damage stats on this guy. Next up is Kyle, and this guy can absolutely be used as a 5-star. This guy can be used as a 1-star, or a 2-star rather. I use this guy as a 2-star for a very long time, really for the ultimate to copy Windstrex in Arena, and then you can use your own Windstrex basically with a Kyle here. So definitely not needing a 6-star and almost never really useful as a 6-star. Then we have Scarlet, and Scarlet is someone who actually you can deal without a 6-star if you're using her as like sort of a joint attack type character where you're trying to just proc the joint attacks. But she benefits greatly from a 6-star because she's really just revolving around bleeds. Bleeds don't do a lot of damage to the high attack. I'm not going to get that high attack without a 6-star, so definitely worth 6-starring if you are using Scarlet. Now, here's an interesting one in Marion Shadowblood because she does a lot of damage based on max HP. So you don't really necessarily need 6-stars for her to do damage. However, she's actually very, very squishy in the spots that you're going to be using her. And so she oftentimes needs a 6-star just for her to be surviving in the boss fights in which you're using her, or in Void Tower. So I'd actually recommend a 6-star if you're using a Marion Shadowblood. Let's go ahead and jump to the Soul Plunders, and next up is Santis. And for the same reason that I recommend 6-starring Marion Shadowblood, I recommend 6-starring Santis, because the way you're going to use her in all the dungeons and everything like that, you're going to want the 6-star for the extra tanky stats, even though you don't really get anything out of her 6-star. It's definitely worth just getting it up there for the extra tanky stats. Next up is Andre, and Andre, if you're going to be using him in Guild Boss, in Ash, or something like that, definitely want to 6-star him because he's not going to do a lot of damage without it, and that's pretty much all he's doing is just a bunch of damage. So definitely want to 6-star Andre here. Next up is the Sylvan Woodlands, and first up is Helmar, and Helmar is so bad, but if you are using him, I actually don't think you necessarily need him to be 6-star. He doesn't actually do a lot of damage. He has a very mediocre base attack. It's okay. But he just really doesn't have high multipliers. He's blending the bleeds, and he's detonating the bleeds. So you could probably just get by with him being a 5-star, even though the bleeds will do less damage. He doesn't really scale well anyways. Next up is Kain, and Kain, I think, can really be used without a 6-star here. Really, he has some really good debuffs with the defense down 2, and the stun, and the strip on the basic. His passive is solid, and if you are using him for the passive, I definitely recommend that you actually go ahead and 6-star him. But other than that, I would recommend just keeping him at 5 stars if you are going to use him. Next up is Irindil, and Irindil is never going to be used unless you 6-star him. He just doesn't do enough damage in general, but he does even less if you don't have him as a 6-star. So definitely recommend you 6-star him if you're going to use him. Next up is Antinua. And Antinua is a damage dealer, and she's one of the best single target wood damage dealers, actually the best single target wood damage dealer. And so definitely recommend 6-starring her if you're using her, because you're going to get some big damage out of her with that 6-star. Next up is Lunar Melisa, and Lunar Melisa, we do not need a 6-star at all. You're really using her for that AoE taunt. Now, the exception to this is if you're using her for the AoE taunt and you find yourself dying, definitely 6-star her, because if she dies before everyone actually ends up kind of getting controlled by that taunt, then there's really no reason she's there, because she's taunting, which means the characters are still going to hit her, which means if they do enough damage and actually kill her, then you're going to lose your CC. So you do need her to be tanky enough to CC and keep the CC on, but if she's not dying, then there's no reason to 6-star her. Next up is going to be Melisa, and Melisa I would recommend 6-starring. I think she doesn't really have too many places in the game. She can be used as a select a Wind Strikes counter and a Tulpa character, and you're going to want the higher damage, especially with her trait here. Her trait's going to scale with her base stats and her stats inside the game. So she gets exponentially increased value because her gear increases, or gear stats increase based on her base stats, and then her stats in-game increase off of her trait. So definitely want a 6-star for her. Next up is Virgil, and Virgil definitely does not need a 6-star. He could be a 5-star and work in dungeons. The only thing is, if you're going to use him as a 5-star, he does need to be tanky enough to survive if you're using him in dungeons, or if you're using him in arena. Just have him speedy. You probably can use him at a 2-star here if you're using him in arena, because all you need is for that first turn silence, and that's good enough. So if you're using him in dungeons, maybe you want a 6-star. If you're using him in arena, definitely don't. Next up is Windstrex, and Windstrex is another one that can be used as a 2-star. Really, you're using her for this speed buff up. Now, I do recommend taking her to a 5-star because you're using her in Void Tower, you're using her in some game modes that she ends up taking a hit. So you want her tanky enough to, survive those stray random hits, but definitely do not need anything more than a 5-star on Windstrex here. Next up is going to be Celestial Kain, and another one that can be just chilling at 5 stars. You're using him for this full turn invincibility here, and he can do that at 5 stars. Or at 6 stars. He also has a taunt and stuff, and anything that he does here, he doesn't do much damage, so you really only care if he's a 5-star. Next up, we're going to go into the Titan Iceland factions, and we have Rickard here. Now, Rickard, although he's very tanky and he can survive, you do want to 6-star him because his damage is based off of max HP, and you're not going to have a lot of max HP if you don't 6-star him. So definitely go ahead and 6-star Rickard here if you want to use him. Lordric here. Now, I actually don't think there's a huge place for Lordric anywhere. There's a couple characters on this list that have that, but I think that even though he has max HP scaling skills here, he doesn't have a lot of scaling within the skills. So even if you use him as a 5-star, if you're using him for like the strip on the ultimate, or perhaps a way to counteract the stun, I would say that you can go ahead and use him as a 5-star. Otherwise, use him as a 6-star if you're using him for a little bit extra damage. Next up is Hassel, and another one that has really poor scaling on the ultimate. I think this guy could be used as a 5-star. Really, you're using him for the extra heal and the crit resistance, and that's pretty much it. His ultimate doesn't do much damage, so really we're only using him for the heal, so he needs to be at a 5-star at the minimum, and that's good enough. Next up is Hakrin, and another one who benefits from a 6-star, even though you don't need him as a 6-star to perform his job. You can keep it as a 5-star, but 6-star helps a lot because you're going to get that extra base defense, and he's sharing his base defense, or his defense rather, with this whole squad. So the higher base defense, the higher amount of defense you could share. Not only that, but his max HP scaling for himself will increase a lot due to the fact that he has a decent base HP when you get to 6 stars. So definitely worth taking to 6 stars there. Then we have Myla here, and Myla is someone I would just keep at 5 stars. She doesn't do a lot of damage to begin with at 6 stars, and so I'd rather just use her as a CC bot. Just freeze on the skills here, so just keep her at a 5-star, and that's good enough. Next up, we have the free cities, and we have Nathalia first up. And Nathalia, absolutely want a 6-star. This is my #1 epic in the game as a 6-star, so definitely go ahead and 6-star her for the extra damage on her skills. I don't think there's much else to say about that. Then we have Harbeg, and Harbeg does quite a bit of damage, and if you are going to use him, I think it's an all or nothing. If he one-shots, it's great, or if he does a big hit, it's great, but you're not going to get that big hit without a 6-star. So even though Harbeg has almost no use in the game, if you're going to use him, go ahead and 6-star him if you want to get any results out of him. Then we have Borden, and Borden, I think, has also very minimal uses in the game, but I do think he could be used as a select counter against some of the unique buffs like Invincible, Death Immunity, and Guard. And so if you're using him for that purpose, go ahead and 6-star him because you're going to need a little bit more damage on the ultimate to make this work. Then we have Jonathan, and Jonathan, I think, needs to be a 6-star as well in order for him to be useful. He has that healing on the base, or the passive, and he has damage scaling based on missing HP, but he's not going to do a lot of damage, or he's not going to do a lot of healing if he doesn't have those higher base stats. So definitely going to want to 6-star him if you're going to use him. Then we have Gajar, and Gajar absolutely does not need a 6-star here. Using him for the poison explosion or for the unique debuffs or the random debuffs that he has. And so you don't need to 6-star him because you don't need damage or you don't need the extra tankiness generally. He's usually good enough to survive because he's using speed comps, so definitely do not need to 6-star him. Then we have Light Sack, and Light Sack, absolutely you want to 6-star him. The areas that he's going to be used in, you definitely want to 6-star him, especially if you're using him in arena defense. He's going to be really easy to beat if he's at a 5-star, so definitely go ahead and 6-star him. He's going to get a lot of extra attack, a lot of extra HP for the revival sets and things like that you're going to be running on him. Next up and last up is the Dragon Scale Marsh, and we have Asrina first off, and Asrina is definitely going to want to be a 6-star if you're going to use her. She is going to want to deal the damage, and she's not going to do a lot of damage if she's at a 5-star. Also, she's based off of Ignites, and Ignites do less damage, less attack, so you definitely want to 6-star her to get some value out of her. And last up is Zatlux, and Zatlux, he definitely is almost unusable at a 5-star in my opinion, because his whole kit revolves around killing people. You're not going to kill people at 5 stars generally, so you definitely want to 6-star him to even get any use out of him. But that being said, he's a great character at 6 stars, so definitely going to want to 6-star our Zatlux here for some real good results out of him. So that's pretty much it for all the epics. Let me know what you all think, and if you want any other explanations more in depth on any character. Wanted to make it quick and just give brief thoughts on what I think you should be 6-starring for what purpose. If you want to see me do the legendaries as well, which ones I think can be kept at 5 stars, let me know by commenting down below, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you for the next one.